It's my pleasure actually to welcome you to the Noor Riyadh Artist Talks in its third edition, The Bright Side of the Desert Moon, قمرة على رمال الصحراء. So this year festival is showcasing over 120 artworks by over 100 artists and over 35 nationalities all around the world. Over the next 3 weeks, as audiences experience the 5 hubs of our festival, our discussion and workshops highlight the observation and experiences of light, honoring the perspective of the viewer and the act of collective viewing. While the series of artist-led workshops spread across the 3 weeks are teaching printmaking and also photography and performance arts, the talks unite artists in conversation about their inspiration and intentions. Please join me to welcome our first panel titled Social Engagement in the Urban Environment with the speakers Tobias Rieberger, Sophie Lali, and Samuel Miaz. Hi, welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to have you on this panel talk. So this panel talk includes these 3 speakers whose works explores the urban infrastructure with the visual aesthetics and invites us to explore often hidden elements. We will talk to the speakers about to understand their practice and hear what they're presenting at Noor Riyadh in its 3rd edition. We will have an on-stage discussion and conversation. So let's welcome firstly with the artist Tobias. Can you please introduce your practice and your work in Noor Riyadh?
Yeah, I try. My practice, how would I describe it? Of course, most of my work still happens in galleries and museums, but I also do a lot of work in public space. I do cooperations with other artists. I do cooperations with people from other fields. I really like to do things in private homes also because, because maybe we talk about later. What I did here in Riyadh is a wall, which is kind of the entrance, the main entrance of Salam Park, and it has to do with the idea of, let's say, a border between what is the idea of leisure time and not leisure time, and how you can look at it. That's how I would put it for the moment.
Thank you, it's lovely. And Sophie Lali, can you introduce your artwork for Noor Riyadh in its 3rd edition, please?
Yes, I'm a visual artist. So for this festival, I make a video installation in Salam Park too. And I'm working a lot with the public space, but in the same time with the dance company. And there is it's very important for me to mix the context, the bodies, and the image. And I began my first art was painting. And very quickly I understand that my best pencil could be the camera. And I continue to paint, but with my camera. And because I have, I don't know, I think I paint a lot of bodies, traces of moving bodies, but after I understand that the body is probably me, and I need to more spoke about the context and the landscape. And in Salam Park, it's a video installation that appears at the sunset on the trees. And I talk with the other things after, I think.
That's interesting, thank you. And Samuel Miaz, can you please introduce your practice as producer of artworks in the public realm?
For sure, thank you. So my name's Samuel Mays. I'm from a company called UAP, which started in Australia about 30 years ago, curating and fabricating public art. And we've expanded to China and North America, and we've been working here in the Kingdom since about 2008. Whilst we don't have anything in the festival, we were very much integral to the very initial stages of Riyadh art through our curatorial practice. And a key focus on our work as consultants and fabricators is ensuring that when we curate artists into the public realm, that we curate artists whose practice are appropriate for a particular site, the brief, so that we're not just plonking an artwork outside a building or plonking it into a park. There's actual real meaning and integration with the architects, the landscape architects, and broader creatives within a project. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So to start with Tobias, your practice uses concepts and strategies from different fields, from painting, sculptures, and also design and architecture to create site-specific artworks or interventions. Can you say something more about these redefined artistic production for you?
Yeah, I should. Generally, I think what I'm interested in art is usually kind of a rethinking of a certain kind of status quo. I use a lot of, I would call it strategies from other fields, because I find the way I come from, from this idea that an artwork, for example, has to be looked at, or an artwork is something which is there and you hear, and you go to a museum and you stand in front of a painting or a sculpture and you stare at it, and in the best moments it might stare back at you. But this idea that this is the only way how to deal with art, I find a bit limited, and somehow I try to create a bit of these doubts, or recreate a bit of these doubts with my work. So, for example, just to say in a very simple example, like it must have been 25 years ago or something like that. I was with friends of mine at the National Gallery in Berlin, and it's this beautiful Mies van der Rohe building, and it was a great show, Gerhard Richter, and we were in the show, and I'm very quick usually in show, looking at shows, so I was the first ones out, and there was a Richard Serra sculpture in front of the building, which was a 1 by 1 by 1 meter steel cube, rusty steel cube, and I was sitting on this cube waiting for my friends, and it was a hot summer day, and this cube was really cold, and it was beautiful to sit on it, and suddenly I had an understanding for the sculpture which was different than if I would have just looked at it. And not that I'm saying, like every sculpture you should be able to sit on and it should be cold, but it gave me an idea of how suddenly with your butt you were understanding the artwork differently than you would have understood it when you have just stared on it. And so out of things like that, other experiences and ideas, I became more and more interested in something that I always call more like hanging out with an artwork, not just looking at something, because if I imagine I have let's say an Andy Warhol painting behind my desk, and I'm sitting and looking in this direction, but I still have an idea that this great artwork is behind me, it also does something with me. So I try to, coming back to your question, I try to introduce strategies from other fields like architecture or design into the art, but not with the idea to merge something, but more to, like my parameters are quite strictly, the perspective is sculpture or artwork in general, but I think there is moments in other fields that haven't been looked at in the combination with what an artist normally does. And that brings, I think, a lot of interesting moments how an artwork is or what an artwork could be. And that's something I'm constantly busy with since 30 years.
Well, that's interesting. Thank you so much. Sophie Lally. Sophie Lally, can you speak about the research process you undertake to overlay one context, such as an island, into another, such as Riyadh in this case?
Yes, Fading, it's a series, kind of series that I develop all over the world, now, till then. And it's funny because it's, I can say that the projects began in a desert, in a salted desert. 10 years ago, a bit more than 10 years ago, I went to a place that I really would love to be. It's a salted desert. And for me, it was a shock because it was so abstract that it was really, I don't know what can I capture, film, or something like that. It was so abstract. It was really blue and white. And I can't understand the scale. And my works till then were really, it was, till this moment was really prelevement of the nature that I bring into a screen or into a space like a gallery. And when I was there, I was like, wow, maybe I don't have the good relationship with the landscape. Something is strange. So I let it like that. I come back in France, and a few months ago, I were in Iceland. And in Iceland, it's like a small desert with just one circle road around, and in the middle, it's the kind of volcano desert. And I walk a lot, I love hiking, and further I go, further I discover an isolated house. And everybody is living really isolated, and I spoke with them, and I asked, you are really far from them, and it's like you still want to be further. And I began a series of photos. So now I have a lot of photos of this isolated house, but I'm the only one that I know they are isolated. And after this trip, because it was not for works, it was just a trip. And a few weeks after, normally I had an exhibition in a park, and they asked me to show them my video of landscape on screen. And one night I have a flash, and I said, no, it's a mistake. I can't put screen on the landscape and show my videos. I asked the curator, and I said, please, I just want to have a big projector, and I want to try something. I said, okay, are you sure? I said, yes, I want to project something on the vegetation. So he said, okay, we'll try. So I was a bit frightened, but I continued to think about my things. And I took one of the picture, and I take it out the context, just isolated by myself the house, and I decided to reactive this house. Because I thought when you are driving in the countryside and you can see a light, a very small light, and you go, and after you arrive to a house, and there is some light, and it's like if there are light in the house, that you can come to the house. If you need something, you can go to see the people and say, I don't know. So it's a sign that there is somebody inside. So I did that, and I reactived my photos by the window. So I tried to make something like a party. So very often there is sound with this installation, like a party inside. And when I put the video projector, when I arrived to install my first house, yes, you have the number 1. no, not on this, but, and I put the video projector and I put my videos, and I saw that on the vegetables, on the vegetation, my house appears, and I walk a bit on the right, a bit on the left, and I saw that the vegetation controls the image, because it's like an anamorphose where you are really in front of in the same line of the video projector. You have the image really clear, and when you go on the left and on the right, the image is not destruct.
Dynamic.
Yes, dynamic, and the image is not clear. Yeah. There is some light, there is some volume, but volume is the vegetation, it's not the image. So I was like, okay, we are discuss together, the vegetation, the nature, and me. And very quickly, I understand that it was a conversation between three elements, because it's the sun decides that the image appears. So there is the sun, there is the vegetation, and the third element is it's me. So it's my body, so it's the body of the spectators. So the spectator constructs the image. It's not an image that appears like that. And normally the house, here it's very specific, because the house is floating, because the vegetation is different from Europe. There is no no leaves till the ground, so it's a little bit floating. That's why I put some pilotis to be connected to the trunks. And what yes. And the house, yes. And I try to find the and yes. Ah yes, and what is interesting for me to be there too, because I said at the beginning now it's a 10 house, so I have 9 house before, and for me it's like, and each located, each apparition is very specific to the city where it appears. So I create it's like to create my own personal mythology, and I create my own map, my own. So it's like to create a village on the scale of the globe, and not only in France or something else. Or it's something that I try to open, and there is no boundaries. There is no. It's something really like. Yes, it's a way to show how I could see with poetry the world, or and to open mind of the people. And for me, in the public space, it's really like everybody knows the park, Salam Park. The people who are going to Salam Park, they know the park by heart, but I show them something that they didn't see before that I can appear.
Thank you. That's such an interesting, actually, design process for your artworks. So moving on to our special guest, let's say, or speaker, Samuel Meaz. My question to you is, what's the role of the institution and the curator in facilitating such projects? Take us through the process of your work, please.
Absolutely, I will. But I just wanted to jump back to a comment that Tobias made about the tactile nature of sitting on the Richard Serra work, and how that changed the way you were thinking about your practice at the time. And certainly growing up, going to art galleries and museums, it was, look, don't touch, look at that nice object, don't touch. And certainly over the last 25 years, new art is all about the experience. It's the tactile nature, it's the sense of emotions, and I think that's. I really enjoyed hearing that comment, because until anyone can start to touch something and understand what's the point of the Richard Serra work in that case, it's otherwise a cube that's sitting there. And art now should be touched. It should be played with. It should be climbed on. kids should fall off it. The lights that were on your work, people should be going up and seeing what it's like, burning their fingers potentially. It's about the whole experience. So it's a little bit off topic there. But in terms of what we're seeing with regards to our clients and the projects and commissioners, globally they're becoming more mature in their practices and why they want public art or art within their development or their project. I'll step away a little bit from the likes of galleries and museums because they have a reason for being. People go there to view art, and they have curators that select what's on display. If we take a step over to public projects and even private developments, more and more people are seeing that we're finding that there is real value in art. There is a return on investment for them that's more than just the financial. It's about bringing people to a place. It's about a broader well-being, sustainability, reason for them to invest that money. And it doesn't, some of the more naive clients in Australia particularly, it's a ticker box. We're putting art into a project. But like I said, more and more projects understand the value of art. We're seeing artists being far more adventurous, using a range of technologies. Things like AI keep coming up, and robotics and all sorts in terms of our manufacturing. And we're embracing that. I think that's exciting because at the end of the day, people will come to see art for the artisanal nature of it, the tactility of an object. And so even with all of the technology, all of the AI, at the end of the day, an artwork is made by an artist and their studio and their team, and there's always going to be that there, and that's something that it enhances the experience of the viewer and the audience. Projects are getting much more ambitious in scale, and nowhere more than here in Saudi. Obviously, there's some incredible projects going on, both through Riyadh Art and through a number of the projects around the country, and it's exciting times.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It was lovely actually to hear both of your process through producing art or making art. But to bring back, since we had a little bit of more of Sophie's and Samuel process, I would like to bring back the question to Tobias about the design or the process that you take, the research process you take while doing artworks.
I mean, in a ways it's always the same, and in a ways it's always very different, Of course, you try to physically look at the space, what's possible. You look into the context, what's possible. You look into the technical side, what's possible. You look into the economical side, what's possible. But in the end of the day, you have to make something that you're interested in yourself, at least the way I work is, of course, that I always try to imagine what would be an interesting artwork for me in this place, and that's somehow the starting point, that I'm interested in what I'm interested. So the chance that if you're interested in something, other people are interested in something is much bigger than I think if you would have a process of imagining what other people would like. I think you get better results if you really try to understand what you would like in a certain place and what you would find interesting. You get into more, I think also you have the chance to get into more extreme or more, something that is more kind of a really decided thing, is not, you don't get stuck into something mediocre if you really go after what you think what's possible, and yeah, and then you go from there. You know, like from a certain point of view, you know, it's never like the one idea that makes a work possible. You know, like usually it's a kind of a mix of ideas you already had, you might have carried around for, I don't know, 10 years or 2 years, and then, you know, I had a lot of times I have this experience that when I try to make something in a certain context, you know, old ideas suddenly find a place and click with other ideas and click with the context and click with the space you're in, and that's how things come together, and then suddenly it all makes an idea for an artwork, and then you start working on it. You know, I always think one thing is to have the idea, but then working on it, you know, I had processes. There's one image of an entrance of a metro station in Paris I made. You know, the whole process, and you would probably know that very well since you're producing artwork in public. You know, this process took 10 years, you know, from the moment the curator has asked me if I would be taking part in it until it was inaugurated. So, you know, having an idea is one thing, but then working on it until it really becomes a physical object or an environment or whatever it is in the end. But that requires a lot of, I mean, I call that work, you know, getting the idea, playing around with ideas. Of course, it's also work, and it's work of the artist, but somehow is also, you know, it's a very playful process, and it's a process that usually is interesting and funny, and but then, you know, then the work starts, and that can be really long and very painful as well.
Yes, sure, it is. So regarding when you said the work starts and it gets really hard, I remember we were talking about, Sophie, also we were talking about your upcoming works, and you were discussing with me that you were having, like, to continue the series of your work. If we can discuss that?
Yes, of course. I would love to continue the expanding works, these expanding works. And in my work, in generally, it's always a question of, how do you say, a question of body, a space, and territories, or with if the body, maybe the body could be on the image or outside, and it's the body, the spectator is the body that really context the things. So it's really important for me. And now, and I work, I said, I work a lot with the dance company, and and now I'm working on a new project with a choreographer who decided to cross the Eurasian continent by walk a few years ago, 2 years or so, and to one point to another point. And I follow him, and I did a lot of shooting about him walking, and now I'm trying to find different way to show the different manners to see the body in the scale of the body on at the scale of the global map, the global the planet. So it always is a question of size between the bodies and the landscape, and yeah.
That's interesting. So thank you so much for all of our 3 participants, and I would like to bring the questions and answers. If you have any questions you want to engage with the artists, we would love to hear that. So, yes, please.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much. I was kind of curious about the social engagement part, and how your works of art, obviously there's a big, excuse me, there's a big period of your ideas and production, and then it goes on site can you tell me any stories of like how the public have engaged with your work that's kind of unexpected when it's been in public space, because then it takes on its own life after that point? Do you have any experiences?
About the engagement?
Yeah, like how people engage with your work. So you have your ideas and you have how it responds to the site or culture, but then when it's in, like on site, it's in a public space and you kind of hand that work over to the public. So it would be, yeah, I would just like to know more about the engagement side of it.
Yeah. For me, it's like to give poetry and to grab or open a kind of new imagination, or open a space and a poetry space in your mind, and a different way to see the things, and to take time, and to not. I'm really like I'm a contemplative girl, so it's not that I want to everybody being contemplative, but it's just to stop a bit and just look around, and there is still something that can appear. I really like epiphany, and I'm always waiting something appears, and I have intuition, and I always use my camera like that. So I always try to catch something that if you don't take time, you can't see. And after, for me, it's like it's not magical, but it's something really beautiful, and it makes me it's very good experience. So I try to give it to the spectators, the same feeling, or to recreate the experience I received.
I would say, but that's not only true for public artwork. I think I'm interested in having different levels of introduction that are possible for my work. You know, on one hand, for people, which of course in the public sphere is mostly the case, you know, people who don't know anything about art, is there a possibility to integrate them, to make them maybe even curious about something else, what's going on with the work, down or up to the level where it's like a real expert discussion. Of course, there's a lot of things, you know, which you can only kind of discuss with people who have a big knowledge about art, and of course a lot of questions I'm having to art and I'm trying to pose with my work have to do with these kind of expert questions in a way. But I'm always trying to have a level of, you know, that people, and of course it's also my perspective, but what I imagine people could have, could enjoy also on a level that is not this expert level. And so I think, but in a way that I think is true for every art that I make, that you have these different possibilities to engage with it. So I think there's also something you can get out of it when you're not in the field of the kind of expert discussion that is going on between, let's say, artists and people who really engage with art. But I mean, there's another work here which is a good example. This is this facade of a museum with a lot of neon signs inside, and it was connected to a plinth that was standing outside of the museum, and you could connect with your iPhone to this program that played your music from your phone, and the whole facade of the museum was reacting to the music you played. So, you know, people who were, and actually it was in the middle of, really, the museum is in the center, on the main square of the city, and there's a lot of people hanging out there, mainly younger people, and it was super interesting to see that these people who suddenly became visible through that installation. They played their music, you could hear the music. Here, this orange thing is the pedestal, and you could, via Bluetooth, could connect, and it played your music loud enough that you could have a party in the square, but also the museum facade reacted to your music. And it was really interesting how people suddenly, you know, like was every night was a party there. The whole summer where this installation was there, because people got visible. You know, people who had no visibility normally in the field of the city suddenly gained visibility, and some of these people, you know, who have maybe some of them have not even heard about what a museum is, suddenly were interested in looking, what does this guy who made this work also do? And they went into the museum and looked at the show, you know. So this level of introduction was, of course, had nothing to do with my artistic thoughts in a certain context of what art is and what art nowadays is. Of course, partly, of course, yes, because this kind of social interaction was also part of the work, but it's a different level, you know. But then people went into the museum, they looked at my work. Of course, they might have understood something very different than what I would understand if I would look at the work. But it was an introduction, and it was and I'm very interested in this kind of different levels of dealing with an artwork, and you know, and getting to know and getting interested in what kind of weird thoughts we have with making art.
I think.
Yeah, sorry, it's very long, but
Thank you for the question. And in putting some photographs together, I was looking for images where we have people in them, because so often the artworks are taken without any interaction, any people. So a core tenet of ours is to make artwork accessible for people. You should be able to talk to someone who knows about art, curatorially be strong, be bold, show the artists in their best practice. But at the same time, we have open houses all the time at the workshop, and we just invite people to come in and walk around and talk to the artists and see how the artwork is made, and understand that it doesn't have to be in a museum or an art gallery, that you can make noise, you can see things being made, and it's fun. We're also seeing a lot, particularly in Australia and our North America projects, and with our China projects as well, that the integration of technology, so the selfie panda up there, that was built in a place where they were trying to raise money for the panda sanctuary that was there. The fun part for the audience is that they can link up their phone and they can have their face on the camera, and so that gets people there, and it starts telling a story about the pandas and their plight and the need to raise money and so on, and to keep the research going. It goes full circle to the point where I think a big part about the social engagement is just starting conversations about art. I catch lots of Ubers. The Uber drivers say, "What do you do?" "Make public art." "What's public art?" And you have the conversation, and we'll drive around, particularly in Brisbane. It's like, "Well, we did that. Is that an artwork? I didn't realise that's what an artwork could be." And so you then have these wonderful conversations about artworks that are in the public realm that they don't like, that they do like. There's then conversations about, did the government pay for that? Did my taxes pay for that? Because I don't like that. Why should my taxes be paying for an artwork? What's the benefit to me, to the public realm? You can have some really fascinating conversations with people around good design, creative industries. So it's about accessibility for us. It's about conversation starters, and not just necessarily with the visual arts or sculpture, but creative industries broadly.
Thank you so much for all of our speakers. If you have any other questions, yes.
Hi, my question is for Tobias. I was wondering about your work in private spaces and how are they also interactive or interventions with architecture, or yeah, just curious. So moving away
I
from
mean,
the public space.
they are, of course, also very different always, depending on what it is, who it is, where it is. Some are interactive, not everything. I mean, in the ways everything is interactive because, you know, like if you look at something and you take something home from that, that might have changed your mind a little bit, is also interactive. Maybe it's not just about touching, it's not just about climbing on something. Of course, I think the best thing that can happen also to things you can touch and you can climb on is that something happens in your brain and that something changes there. So, but generally, I think I don't make a big difference between something in a private space. You know, like in the end, it has to be an interesting artwork. It has to be, you have to be curious. It has to deal with the idea of the otherness somehow, I would say. And at least my experience in life always was the artworks that really did change my idea of what art is or my perception, or a lot of times artworks that in the first place I didn't like, you know, and I had problems with, but these problems in the end were kind of very positive and started a different idea. And I think that's the main thing, of course. But as I said, you know, different levels of introduction and different, but in the end, you know, I'm always a bit surprised about myself as well, that, you know, like whether it's in public space, in private space, whether it's a small project, sometimes I have to think about small projects much longer than I have to think about big projects. In the end, it's not a big difference because in the end, you want to make an interesting, a great, I don't know, something that's stunning for yourself, something that describes your own problems that you have looking at art and dealing with art. And so in the end, there's not a big difference in the projects.
Thank you. I think Muruj wants to ask a question.
Thanks, Maysoon. So my name's Muruj. I'm an anthropologist, and my work revolves around citizen engagement and social engagement. So this was very enriching for me. Thank you for the intriguing conversations. I have a question that's a bit introspective. It's personal. I want to understand when your art became everyone's art. I mean, there's a switching point for every one of you as an artist. When you decided to go public, what was that switching point and why?
When you give it to the public, it becomes something for the public. So it became real, and now when it's done, it's yours. And it's still mine, but it's yours. And I don't know if it's a decision. I think it's come. It's not. I don't want to say it's a gift, but you give something that you can think or imagine, and it's something that you want to share. So.
But there was no specific switching point in your career where how did it come to happen?
I don't know, it's all right.
You're just a lucky girl.
Yeah.
I mean, probably it's also a bit, you know, like, I remember that in the portfolio I handed in for art school, I already did public work, you know, like I just made things unasked in public space. So must have to do with a bit with a, I don't know, what's the English word for Größenwahn? That you overestimate yourself, that you do things that are interesting for others, which is anyways something what an artist does, you know, like you make things and just believe that other people would be interested in it too, you know, which of course is not a given, but I cannot, I don't remember a switching point. I might have always overestimated myself. You know?
Okay, well, thank you so much. Okay, let's get the last question.
Thank you. It was super interesting. And it's more a question for you, Samuel, I guess, because during the discussion, I tried to think about like the history of the public art. And for example, I grew up in Paris, and I've got in mind one of the most famous public art commission is by Jan Dibetz. So the small medallion that tried, he wanted to trace like the meridian of Paris, if I remember well. And I've got the sensation when I saw all the pictures of the works you have produced that it's big, it's huge, it's enormous. And I'm just thinking how you deal maybe with more conceptual practices, how you deal with something that is maybe less invisible, less bigger. I mean, like, yeah.
Sure. So they were all the big projects. We do have other projects that aren't like that. I think Tracy Emin did a fantastic work in Melbourne a number of years ago, which is a series of small little birds, or sparrows. They're about that big, and they're placed around a central part of the city, and that's about discovery. It's about the word of mouth that there's this artwork that's there, and you go and look for it. We've done a number of works over time where they're not obvious, they're not overt. It is about someone telling you to go and have a look down that laneway and stand in a particular location on a particular dot, and you have to look for along the pavement, and then you stand and look up and things appear. These are the big photos, these are the big shots of the big artworks, but the scale of works, the typologies of works, they change, and it is very much about the space, the place, what the commissioner is wanting to get out of it. So there's not one size fits all. That's for sure.
But I think generally there is a tendency, into giganticism and. But that's not just in public art, like if you imagine, like when I kind of came out of art school, there were still gallery shows with drawings, Who has seen a gallery show with drawings in the last 20 years, I think that's a general tendency, and it's when I made a couple of years ago, I made a museum show with drawings. It was really hard to convince them, and I have piles of drawings and watercolors in my drawers, and I think that's the same with public art, If you don't come up with like a big fat thing, it's not impossible, but it's definitely harder to.
A big part of it for us is that, so through Australia, most cities in Australia have a % for art for new developments. That can range from 0.25% of the capital cost of a building up to 1%. So on some projects, clients go, well, if I'm paying $2 million, I want bang for my buck. I want everyone to see this. And so that's how you end up with some of these big projects. But similarly, there might be a $50,000 contribution. And so that then means you have to think differently about it. Back to an earlier point, we have some naive projects in Australia that we have to deal with who don't get it, and they just want something that, boom, I'll put it there and everyone can see how much money I've spent. And we have more mature commissioning clients who understand.
So we have to convince clients to pay $2 million for something very small. I think that's a good idea.
It does happen sometimes.
Okay, thank you so much for our speakers and our audience. I would like also to share with you that we will have talks and workshops continue over the next 3 weekends, with adult workshops at Sidra Arts and Jags, with family activities at Salam Park, Wadi Hanifa, Wadi Namar. You can find all of the information for the public program and the pre-register and artist-led workshops through our website or app. Please join us for the next talk entitled Light and Architecture with artist Oscar Lachien and also Raphael, moderated by غيدة المجرن. Thank you. Thank you so much.